The Know Your Gear podcast.
Al says, hey, would love to hear your thoughts about Kramers. I feel like they were everywhere when I was growing up, and I have a soft spot for them, and it feels like I don't hear much about them anymore. That's because Kramer is the bastard stepchild of Gibson now. Fender has definitely gotten better over the years with Jackson, Charvel, for sure. But there was a time when they were the same thing. What happens is Fender buys Charvel Jackson, like 2001, and then there's really no love for the brand at that point. No one's really trying to advance the brand or do something with the brand. They're really just milking the old designs, and then it just becomes a race to how affordable you can get the old designs to people, right? So you buy an IP that's, you buy this look. That's essentially what Fender's after. They buy a look, okay, the 80s metal look, and then it's how cheap can I get this to the people? Because obviously we can source this anywhere in the world. Over time, they decided, to build the brands, right? That's how it kind of works. And they're not by the way, this isn't picking on Fender. PRS was like that with SE. They built an SE line, and then over time they decided, hey, let's turn this into something. By the way, Fender did it to Squier. Gibson did it to Epiphone, right? There was a time where they just didn't care about those brands. Their IP that mattered was Fender. The IP that mattered was Gibson. Gibson, has Steinberger and has, Kramer. Why there's no American-made Kramer guitars, that they can build out of the Gibson factory? It's because to them, at the end of the day, and I'm guessing, because they haven't told me this officially, there's no Kramer guitar that's as valuable as a Gibson guitar. That's just the reality of that. There's no, if you own those two brands and you cared about, money because you're in business, you're like, I can make a product today. I can make a Gibson Les Paul that I have on back order, 10 months, 2 years deep, or I can make this Kramer, and they're not going to do it. So what do? Well, they go, we'll make import Kramers, right? And they have somebody run that. And it's, and you got to understand, there's a problem on every level. You got to go to the next level, right? So here's the next level. You got a dealer, okay? And the dealers, take Sweetwater Guitars out of the equation, right? Take the big guys out of the equation. You have all the other dealers. You have the other dealers, and they want Gibsons, right? So it's easy enough. But more importantly, they all have credit lines, these dealers. They don't have so much money, just like all of us. There's only so much money to go around. So if you were that brand, if you were Gibson and you're sending your rep to a store and you're like, hey, I need you to sell them, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 worth of guitars, $10,000 worth of guitars, whatever it is your number is, you're going to push those Gibsons, right? And then if they're like, hey, I like to take 10 Kramers, you're like, and think about this. If you're a rep, see, and the system gets kind of broken, and I've dealt with this many times as a dealer, where the rep knows that if I pick, let's use Fender as an example. So I'm a Fender custom shop dealer and I'm a Fender Jackson custom shop dealer. And the rep knows that if I order 6 Jackson custom shops, it's going to take 2 years before I get those in my store. But if I order 6 Fender custom shops, I get them in 12 months. What do you think he wants to sell me? Right? He wants to sell me the thing that, well, first of all, he wants to sell me anything I want to buy because he wants to set me sales. But if he can control the narrative, he's going to kind of, inch me towards getting the guitars that I get faster, because that means I can get then more guitars and then more guitars, right? So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. The reality is that no one really, Kramer is not owned by anyone who really is passionate about it. You can talk about, I think Al John still runs it, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen much of him anymore. But he used to be pretty more active, I think, in the social media range. But and I think he really was passionate about the brand. But in my experience, he had almost no control, and that's what you deal with. I tell you all the time, one of my biggest frustrations with dealing with companies, that's why big companies really suck, is I deal with people who have no authority to make any decisions. I make all decisions, right? If I want to do tomorrow, if I'm supposed to have a video come out tomorrow, but I change my mind and I want to do a different video, I just do it. No one is stopping me. No one. Not Shauna, no one. No one cares. They're just like, whatever, do your thing. That's the benefit of having a small little business. I make the decisions on myself. I just did something crazy. So, which is, we were making so many Blackstock pickups and we're getting so backlogged. I actually stopped production of the Blackstock pickups. We're rethinking our process and how we're going to do this. Thousands of dollars of loss, thousands of dollars. And in the same year that I'm also focused on, hiring a full-time person and, building out the new studio and stuff, all the cameras and stuff. But I want to do this. I think it's the right decision. I don't have a board of directors. I don't have a meeting. I don't have a boss. This is what I want to do, and we're doing it. So I think that's the problem. I bet you whoever runs Kramer now would love for Kramer to be better than it is. And they're not going to say, oh, no, it's not great. They're going to say, oh, no, it's great right now. Because what would you say? You would say, oh, yeah, it could be great if my bosses weren't assholes. It's a brand that it's atrophying off. I think Kramer and it's hard to judge them fully because I think BC Rich is atrophying off as well. There's a bunch of these 80s brands that are just atrophying off because they haven't figured out what really matters, what really is the market, right? They only know two markets, and it's because it's the two easiest markets. People who want to buy a custom shop and people who want to buy the inexpensive version of it. But the reality is that we know that the really good guitars sit in that middle space, and that's where a lot of customers are. And that's where a lot of the meat is. Yeah, Al says BC Rich would do a lot better if their prices weren't stupid. I agree. There's a lot of focus on where the guitars are made. I don't think that's going to matter anymore. I think it's about, to me, BC Rich for a time in the early 2000s were making fantastic guitars, essentially out of the world factory, just like Schecter. They were Schecters shaped like BC Riches. Old school BC Rich lovers did not love this because they wanted the American icon BC Rich guitars. But what they didn't understand was they were getting a guitar that was super quality, that looked the part, that had cool finishes, that was sub $1,000. It was a fantastic instrument. Fantastic instruments. I know because finding them on the internet is hard. It's hard. People who have them love them. Korean-made BC Riches, like Korean-made Epiphones, they're highly collectible because the quality was there and the price points were there. It was like everything was great. BC Rich moved on because BC Rich, again, everything becomes a focus of either got to move units or dollars, and you can't just be happy with the success of just making a great guitar or a good guitar at a good price. Like there's just no love and passion in that. It has to be, either ego driven, which is like, hey, look at this crazy $7,000 guitar, or it has to be money driven, which is this, look at this, $99 guitar I made in a junk factory somewhere. And I think that's where a lot of those companies failed. We'll just pick on my channel. Go through the guitars I've reviewed in the last 2 years and look at these Sire guitars. Look at these mid-tier price, quality instruments. Just amazing. You're telling me that Sire can deliver, right, this quality guitar at $800 that people love, that is built really well, and they can't make a BC Rich or a Kramer exactly like that for the same. Now, I don't want to say I don't like these mid-tier Kramers. They're fine. But nothing's really prompted me to buy one. I think the problem for me is that one of the things that Kramer lacks for me is variety. When they do make a model, there's a couple models that I absolutely love, and I was looking at them. I was like, oh, these are great guitars. I just wish it came in a different color or a different way. And I'm sure they get that a lot, but if you look, a lot of companies like Schecter have no problem. I don't think there's a color or a choice or a model of Schecter somebody can't be somewhat happy with. Okay, so let's pull it up. So looking at Sweetwater, Schecter, which is a fraction of the size of Gibson, has 337 electric guitars listed in the category of solid guitars. Kramer has 76. So look at the massive difference of variety of a brand like Schecter versus Kramer. Also, just like I said, I think what's going to end up happening to the 80s genre of guitars is it'll just go to the collectible market. So it'll all be about buying an expensive one for some reason, which is fine. And like I said, you could I could go on tirades for all kinds of brands and why I think they should be addressing different things. But there's more to it than just we want it. Like I told you, there's the dealers, there's the sales reps, there's economies in play. There's all kinds of things that factor into all those decisions. So I'm just only pitching. I'm only bitching about the one thing. But yeah, like you, I would like to see more Kramers and better series of Kramers. How about this? Could you imagine? Just let me give you an example. Like, could you imagine if Vola could get a licensing deal to just rebrand as Kramer and put a Kramer headstock on that particular guitar? They'd have to change a couple of the specifications because their necks are still the wrong neck profiles, in my opinion. But $1,000 made in Japan Kramer. I mean, the biggest problem is the backlog they're going to have to deal with. That's what I said. Isn't that funny? Like Vola has to like give their guitars away because they have no value. Because everybody's like, oh, it's a Made in Japan guitar. It's really good quality. But no one wants a Vola, right? And so that's why they had to go for this. They pulled it from the dealer market. They went direct to sales. They dropped the prices. You know, they're just everything they can to get the price super down. And could you imagine if it was rebranded Kramer? It would be, like I said, a $1,200 Kramer, right? Made in Japan, still fantastic, right? Would be fantastic because it'd be exciting. Yeah, it wouldn't be the American Kramer you dreamed of as a kid, but here's the funny part: they really didn't make any American Kramers, right? Isn't that what's been implied in multiple videos now? Is that even the ones that say Made in the USA Kramers are kind of sketch now? And if you're really into Kramer, I guess you know more about it than I do because I haven't done a deep research into it, but the takeaway I'm getting is that there was very few actual American Kramers being made. And the good ones were, a lot of them were Japanese parts. So if you like this clip and you'd like to watch another one, you can click right here. And if you want to see the entire episode of the podcast, you can click right there. As always, thank you for your time and know your gear.